All right, let's move on to postmodernism. So, postmodernism, again, like modernism, is not a movement, but an umbrella term that covers that general era. So, postmodernism came after modernism, obviously, and it's a group of art movements that sought to contradict some aspects of modernism as well as arising from modernism. And avant garde movements like Cubism, Dada, Surrealism were precursors. So, in the previous section, in modernism, we covered Cubism and Surrealism, but we didn't cover Dada because Dada was very short lived, but in a nutshell, it's a group of artists who tried to defy the rules of art, like during their time, and so they started using ready-mades objects that were already made that they claimed as their own, and then displayed it as art. You may recognize the urinal sculpture, which is not really a sculpture, it's actually just a urinal that Marcel Duchamp took it and then he laid it down on its side and then displayed it, calling it a piece of art. Well, that's Dada. Okay, and then it had a preference for abstraction, concept, and process. So, starting with postmodernism, we see a lot more abstraction and a lot more conceptual things. For example, these paintings, they were no longer illustrations of what was happening at that time. For example, realism. We look at paintings from realism. They portray, not really portray, they're just paintings of laborers, right? Well, like all of that is gone in postmodernism. The art piece itself has a conceptual basis, and people no longer paint it to record history or to illustrate words in a text. And then there's process, which we talked about. The process of making the art becomes more important than the final product. And postmodernism mainly started in the US after World War II as people fled Europe. So, all these Europeans came over to the US and they created all these postmodernist movements, including abstract expressionism from the previous section. They're all the same people. Okay, and postmodernism includes pop art, conceptual art, installation art, multimedia art, video art, feminist art, performance art, minimalism, and institutional critique, which is critiquing their own art institution, academia. All right, first let's talk about pop art. Okay, so pop art started in 1950 around, and it's an art movement that started in the US. So this is pretty much the second movement that came out of New York and Los Angeles. Okay, and pop art challenged the traditions of fine art by appropriating imagery. Appropriating means they're parodying it or they're referencing it somehow, all of that included. From popular culture, pop culture, and such as advertising and comic books, as well as mundane everyday objects. So if you look at prints by Andy Warhol, he prints Campbell noodle soups, and if you look at sculptures by Jeff Koons, his sculptures depict those really long clown balloons that you like can kind of like turn into a puppy and stuff, or like vacuum cleaners from the 50s. or advertising in the case of some other artists. Maybe Richard Hamilton worked with advertisements in magazines. He would cut them out and create collages out of them. And okay, so pop art also emphasized banal, which is overdone to the point of poor taste, and kitschy, naive imitations and earnestly over eccentric elements through the use of irony. So if you look at a lot of pop art pieces, they are very tongue-in-cheek. They're kind of being sarcastic. They're poking fun at the references, or they're parodying it or satirizing it. And pop art is associated with the mechanical means of reproduction, which is basically prints. From the pop art period movement, we see a lot of prints. They're mass produced. And we also start to see like murals and stuff like that with people like Keith Haring, and referencing comic books and media by Roy Lichtenstein and Richard Hamilton, Andy Warhol. So these are the important artists: Richard Hamilton, Keith Haring, Roy Lichtenstein, Andy Warhol. And they're all from the US except Richard Hamilton. He's English. You probably have heard of Andy Warhol, right? Very famous guy from New York, Los Angeles. All right, so let's look at Roy Lichtenstein's Drowning Girl. So as you can see, Roy Lichtenstein, he is referencing or appropriating American comics from the 40s and 50s. I'm pretty sure that's when it's from, 40s, 50s. That's around the time when comic books became a thing, and I think in the 60s it really caught on. But these are like early comic book, I guess, boxes, comic strips, boxes from comic strips. And he included his own caption, I don't care, I'd rather sink than call Brad for help, which is a very 50s thing to say. So, at first glance, this looks like, I mean, like, what does it look like? Does it look like a computer-generated image, or does it look like a painting? Does it look like a print? Is it a mural? We don't know. So postmodernism, it had a lot of pieces that kind of made viewers question what the process and the methods are. It's artists pushing the boundaries, and with the invention of mechanical means of reproduction, it just became kind of hard to tell whether things are paintings or prints, just because there's, a lot more variety of them. So this is a print, but Roy Lichtenstein, he also works with murals and very big paintings too. And if you look at those paintings, every single dot that makes this these colors, every dot is hand painted with a paintbrush. They're really big paintings, and you can see them if you go to museums in New York, Los Angeles, all over the country. Next, we have Andy Warhol, okay, Campbell's Soup 1. So he made a whole bunch of these. They range from tomato soup to chicken noodle soup to onion soup, like everything. He basically made prints of these very iconic Campbell's cans, soup cans. So Andy Warhol was famous for appropriating and incorporating these images that have to do with America, and then he made a whole bunch of prints became a series, and his use of pop culture in his art to create pop art became such an iconic thing for him. He lived and died doing this kind of work. All right, moving on to conceptual art, 1965 to 1975. Okay, so conceptual art is any art in which the concept behind the work is more important than the aesthetic, technical, and material concerns. And conceptual art is, it was a movement, but now it's more of a term to distinguish art that has concept in the forefront of its interpretation. So, when I say conceptual art, when I'm referring to a piece as being conceptual, usually that means that it has concept, and I'm not referring specifically to this movement. But the only times I would mention conceptual art as a movement is if I'm talking about specific works, which we're going to take a look at soon. So conceptual art includes installations, performance art, and process art, but is not always inclusive. So it can be one of them, or any combination of these. I mean, they can even be like paintings. It doesn't really matter as long as the concept is there. And conceptual art often uses found objects. Due to the philosophical and academic nature of the movement, it is frequently accompanied by an artist's statement or wall text for understanding, which is kind of a requirement starting around this time to have an explanation of the work hanging next to the pieces on display, because they become so hard to interpret, and you would have to know the artist like in person to actually like understand it. So postmodern art kind of became more hard to interpret, which is a thing with which is a very common thing with contemporary art, like art of today. So let's take a look at conceptual art. Okay, like what is this? It just says October 1st, 1978. Okay, so this is a piece by Japanese artist On Kawara, and the piece is called Today, October 31st, 1978. Actually, he has a lot of pieces entitled Today because he painted this painting. This is a painting, by the way. It's like acrylic paint, I think. Like black, completely black background with just white text. He just paints it on. And he would paint this date on that day. So all of his paintings, he made these paintings like one per day, every single day until the day he died. So on October 31st, 1978, he painted this piece called Today, October 31st, 1978. And since there's one for every single day, he would have, November 1st, 1978, or like whatever. Literally thousands of these pieces exist, one for each day. And he would paint them every single day, no joke. Even when he's on vacation, if he goes on vacation, what he does is he would bring a small, tiny canvas around, and he would paint on that tiny canvas. So these canvases are medium-sized. They're not like huge. They're medium-sized, like, like letter-sized paper, maybe twice the size of letter-sized paper. So these are not big, and it doesn't take long to paint it, but to do it every single day is a really it's a display of perseverance and dedication. Even when he's on vacation somewhere, like he takes a tiny canvas with him to make a tiny version. And there are variations of this piece where it's bigger than these normal sizes. he would, because, it gets boring, right? To do the same thing every single day. So he would like make some of them really, really gigantic and make some of them really small. And he would, mix up the mediums, paints that he's using, or the color. But the point is, he's doing this every single day. And every piece is the day, has the day written on it, the day the painting was made. So that's his concept. Okay, this piece is by Joseph Kosuth, entitled 1 and 3 Chairs. So if you look at this piece, this is not a painting. It's just a photograph of the piece itself. What's the piece? Well, they're all part of the piece. Okay, so the title is 1 and 3 Chairs, right? So that means we're seeing 3 versions of a chair, particularly, well, this chair in particular. So we have the actual chair, the chair that exists in our reality, and then we have a photograph of the chair hanging right next to this chair, right? It's the exact same chair, except this is a print of this chair. And then this is the dictionary definition of what a chair is. Okay, so this is an installation piece. Okay, so you display them all at once like this in this exact same composition. And yep, it just shows 3 versions of chairs. Okay, so actual chair, print of a chair, and then the dictionary definition of a chair. So something like this would definitely be conceptual. Well, because it has a very specific way to interpret it. There's a concept behind it. The concept being definitions in our brain, perspectives in our brain, our interpretation of the chair. So Joseph Kosuth worked with works like this. It's rather philosophical. Postmodernism is more of a branch of philosophy than a branch of fine art because of things like this. To be or not to be, is it art or is it not? Right? And something like this, it philosophically challenges our view, our definition of a chair. A very simple object that we just take for granted, but now here we have 3 versions of it. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so we're now living in contemporary times. Contemporary literally means now, like today. Okay, and because we are living in the current point in history, not like we're not living a long time ago, we're living now, right? So the label for now, art that is happening today, is called contemporary art. And usually contemporary art is made by people who are alive. So if a person dies, they're no longer called contemporary because they're not alive at the same time we are alive. Okay, so only when our times overlap is when it's called contemporary. But in the world of art, in the world of, when you're talking about history in general, the person talking about a specific point in time is alive at that time, right? So, for the sake of simplifying things, we call everything after around the 70s, which is after postmodernism, to be contemporary art. But again, like I said previously, these movements also overlap. So right now we're still in postmodernism, but it's also considered contemporary because it's today. So, so let's take a look. Many contemporary artists work in a globally influenced background. So globalism, okay, the world is like connected, like internet, phones. We're way past like telegraphs, right? We don't use Morse code anymore. We're past all that. We are in the age of rapid transportation and electronics and internet. So it's very globally influenced. So you can't really tell which country an artist is from because everything is kind of just like one now. Unless that artist works with concepts or themes that's relevant to their ethnicity or nationality, it's going to be really hard to tell which country an artist is from because it's pretty universal now. And contemporary art uses a lot of dynamic combination of materials, methods, concepts, and subject matter. Okay, so combination. This is the keyword. Everything is very interdisciplinary. Challenging of boundaries and conventions is the main focus due to many things already being done. Okay, so because everything's been done already, they're trying to push the boundaries. They're all edgelords. Academia and institutions drive the need for aesthetic and conceptual research. So the academia, which means like universities and colleges, and institutions like galleries and museums, they drive the art industry. Basically, this is what this means. The topic of identity as part of many artworks influenced by civil rights. So as you may know, the civil rights movement happened in the 1960s, and that's when feminism, African American identity, LGBT identity, things like that, it became important, and it became topics of conversation, right? So after around that time, contemporary art started. Okay, and a lot of the works touch on the issue of race, indigenous people, sex and gender, including feminism, LGBTQ. Okay, so here's an example of contemporary postmodernist video art. This is a piece by Namjoon Paik. This piece is called Nixon. And so Paik did these kinds of work, basically installations of TVs with these instruments that manipulate the TV signal to create the art within the TV. But then it's also a sculpture because this whole thing is a piece, and there's also the installation aspect of it, because depending on where this is installed and how it's installed, it may change the meaning of it, right? So this is both, I mean, this is a lot of things. It's video art, it's conceptual art, it can be seen as a performance because things are happening, right? So it can be performance art, and it's a sculpture, and it's also an installation. So it's many, many different things. And contemporary art of now, has a lot of these things where it kind of like crosses over genres and boundaries. Here's a piece by Anish Kapoor, Turning the World Upside Down. Anish Kapoor is a British Indian artist, sculptor. So he would design these very large structures. These are big. These are huge. They're like 4 people tall. Like one person would be like this height, another right there, 3, and then 4. It's like 4 people high. So he would design these structures out of to be made out of stainless steel, and then he would hire contractors to build it for him, and that's how these things are made. And I know a lot of you are thinking, wait, so he doesn't build his own stuff? The contractors do? So don't the contractors have to be credited for this? No, because it works just like a movie. Okay, you say Steven Spielberg's Jurassic Park, right? You don't name the entire cast and crew and staff of the production team. It's just one person. It's Steven Spielberg's Jurassic Park. Okay. Well, in the same way, in the world of art, the person responsible is kind of like a director, and this person, this artist, works as a director and has a lot of assistants, like sometimes like 100 assistants, and then the list goes on and on. Contractors, contractors. There's gonna be like, I don't know, like 20 people. Well, they're not all credited because Anish Kapoor is the artist. He's kind of like the director of this production. So that's how crediting works in the world of art. Just so you know. So anyway, Anish Kapoor, his works, he has a lot of sculptures, big sculptures that reflect the environment, and that's his concept, that's his thing. It's using these forms to not only create the forms, but to create a whole world within it. So if you stand right here and if you look towards this sculpture, you're greeted with a completely warped version of your reality. And his pieces are creating basically real-time art movement within the sculpture just through reflections. He's using just reflections. It's not like video art or anything. He's just using reflections to reflect light off our world to create new imagery. Okay, so that's Anish Kapoor's thing. Very interesting guy. Look him up on Google or something. Okay, so that is it. This is week 13, and it may or may not be the final lecture. I may have one more lecture for you, but that is just like a general overview of contemporary art, because there's just so much I want to show you. So I may make a presentation of that as well. So if not, this is the final lecture. So you will be tested on these lectures, so make sure you study them. Okay? All right, have a good one.